Welcome to the Clifton Worley Show. This week we have with us Isaiah Dominquez, and some of you may know Isaiah. I've met Isaiah a couple times now at Winter NAMM and Summer NAMM, and how's it going, man?
Good, man. How's it going with you?
It's going real good. We were just
Awesome.
catching up here, and of course, you know, this is really about your music and
Mhm.
telling your musical journey. But we were talking just briefly ago, and I did not know that uh, you were at Summer Now the year before,
Mhm.
and we crossed paths there. But you were telling me that you work for Gear Supply a little bit.
Yep. Yeah. I know that's kind of like saying Voldemort in the gear community right now. Like you're not supposed to say it,
Yeah.
but yeah, I had been working last Summer NAMM 2017 was my first NAMM show ever. So that was when I had been working for full time for Gear Supply for about 3 or 4 months up to that point. And then I had been kind of coming in as a utility guy. Even before then, October 2016, I think it was like a 3 or 4 months after I moved to Omaha I was fresh green to the Midwest. Um, I was brought on just as like when they would go out of town for holidays or when they would go out of town for meetings or conventions, I would just come in and ship things for them. And so I would just come in as just a friend who didn't have a job and needed something to do. And I would just like ship strings out for them at that point in time. And then that happened, that went on for about 6 months. And then they brought me on full time to do like marketing and a little bit of customer service, more shipping, all that kind of stuff. And so 3 to 4 months, and then I ended up at Summer NAMM, and that was a great time.
Yeah, yeah, that was my first NAM too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So we both got to experience its greatness together.
That's it. And I don't think I got introduced to you, or we knew each other at that point.
Hmm.
But we were talking about it. We actually ended up at a party.
Hmm.
That was at this house. I think you guys were staying with like TMG and maybe
Yeah, it
some
was
other company.
us. It was TMG. It was Bearded Boards.
Okay.
Um, and I want to say there was another company there, but I don't remember exactly what it was. There were a bunch of guys from 12 Stone,
Okay.
which is a church down there in the South, I suppose. I don't really know where it was. They just told me that these are all guys from 12 Stone, and I was like, okay, sounds great. At that point, I was more down to meet anybody and everybody who was working in the industry and just like make a bunch of friends and hang out. So I was really, really green and really just excited to meet people. And yeah, we were at that house. We had thrown a party that not everyone was super happy about having a party there, but I had a really great time. That was the first time I ever got to meet Ryan Burke from 60 Cycle.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
got to have a really good like conversation with him, and I remember thinking like we were having this conversation on the roof of this like the roof deck in at night, um, and we were talking about his band, Dinosaur Ghost, and then his other band, which was like this weird avant-garde like jazz band that he had created just to kind of poke fun at the like jazz bands in his area. And I forget what the name of it is, and he'll probably remind me at some point in time. But I remember just having one of those like surreal moments, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like I'm talking to like Ryan Burke of 60 Cycle Hum on the roof of this like building full of people that I've never met before in Tennessee, and I've never been to Tennessee before my entire life, much less like even thought that I would ever end up in like Nashville at any point in time. So it was a really cool time, and it was really surreal.
Yeah. Well, you know who else was there? I'm just gonna name drop. The
Do it.
what became the effects loop. All those guys were
Nice.
there,
Hmm.
and then Mark Schwartz was there,
Yep.
and I
That's
was
some of
there with Anthony Chang, which was kind of it was kind of a weird thing, in that they were
Yeah.
direct competitors.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that because I remember a certain person at Gear Supply kind of telling us like, oh, watch out for those sinusoid dudes. They're gonna try to like. And I was wondering, like, man, this guy seems. I remember Anthony just being like a quiet, like nice dude, and me not thinking like this guy's unsavory in any kind of way. He didn't try to like. It didn't feel like he was trying to like get one over on us or like figure something out about us. I just remember, and I also was like, I mean, I would have told anything to anybody at that point in time. I was so just happy to be in the industry and like hanging out with people. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's where I first met Diaz, and I also first met the Carters.
Yeah.
And Mark Schwartz too. Yeah, met him there also. So it was a good time, man. I feel like I met just a ton of my internet friends in real life. So that was a good time.
Yeah, and I don't want to leave him out. I think maybe Scott Hamilton was there. I'm not 100% sure, but he's also with the Effects guys.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was a fun time. It was kind of a blur.
It always is.
But anyways, that's such a huge coincidence that, and I don't even remember meeting or crossing paths there, but we were in the same place. Getting back to the music though,
sure.
Now you're from the Pacific Northwest, right?
Yes, that's correct. So, I mean, technically, so I grew up in a military family. Okay. So from the ages 5 to 7, for the first like 5 to 7 years of my life, we were kind of moving around and kind of like nomadic. I don't know if anybody else I mean, of course other people know, but I don't know if you know about like the nomadic life of like being in a military family, but it's like you're somewhere for a year, maybe a few months, maybe more time than that. And then you move on. And so I was actually born overseas in Germany.
Oh, wow.
So I was born over there. I spent probably the first 5-ish years of my life over there. Moving and like traveling across like Holland and Germany and Italy and France and Spain. So that was kind of like my upbringing, which really made for like a tight knit, immediate family because I didn't know anybody over there. I didn't speak the languages because we were moving countries so fast. It was like, what am I going to do? Learn Italian in a month or something like that? I'm 1 year old. I don't even speak English yet. So it was just like, it really fostered like a very tight-knit immediate family, and I think it kind of reflects in all of our relationship with each other today. And then when we eventually moved back to the States, it was to California, because I have a lot of extended family in Southern California, and then we ended up moving up to Washington because I don't even really know why. I think my parents had visited there once, or my mom had lived there for a brief time when she was growing up, and she just remembered it being like a really good place to raise kids and just have a family life, some semblance of like normalcy post-military. So we ended up moving up to Washington. So yeah, hails from the Pacific Northwest, I suppose.
So you, that was kind of the biggest part of your upbringing was from the Seattle area?
Yeah, so I did most of I guess you could divide it into like different chunks of like formative years, but my like formative middle school, high school years were spent actually in Olympia, Washington, which is like an hour and 30 minutes south of Seattle, which is actually the capital too of Washington. But I spent like middle school, high school, formative years becoming kind of like the what I would call the foundation of who I am. And then the next 2 years after that, I lived in Bellingham, Washington, which is about an hour and 30 minutes north of Seattle, which is where I kind of discovered who I was musically and who I was going to be and where I was going to go. And then I spent a lot of time, probably 5-ish years in Seattle proper, dating my wife before we got married, and then also just kind of launching a music career that was exclusively mine. So that's those are like the 3 main places in the Northwest where I really feel like I did a lot of my like growing up and becoming who I am and learning who I am and becoming a better person and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, how did the music start for you?
Oh man, the music. So it's kind of funny. I was listening. I listened to a lot of like podcasts that like talk about guitar players and how they start out, and a lot of them are like, oh yeah, I listened to blues guitar, or my dad was a huge blues guitarist, or I was interested in guitar from a really young age and whatnot. And it's true, my dad was a guitar player when he was in college. He's a jazz guitar player, so we did grow up listening to a lot of jazz, and so there was always like 45s of Earl Klugh or the Charlie Byrd Trio, Emily Remler, trying to think, Django Reinhardt, just all that very classic jazz that was growing up. But I really didn't have any interest in being a musician for a really long time. Actually, I always say that I only ever wanted two jobs in the my entire life. The first one was to be a professional basketball player, and the second one was to be a professional musician. So it's like I shot for the stars both times. I wasn't going to settle for any like desk job. I was only going to be famous, I suppose. But yeah, the first, I would say up until I was probably 13 or 14, no, probably 11 or 12. I was really only interested in sports and playing sports, and I was in band because the cool kids were in band. So my first instrument was actually the trumpet.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I started that in fifth grade because it was just a way to, like, I don't know, I was drawn to it because my friends were drawn to it, and then my friends started dropping out, and I just kind of fell in love with music and the emotion of, like, I don't know, how closely music is tied to emotion, and how it can make, like, how a really great piece of classical music can make you feel different ways throughout the entire like movement. And I kind of caught the bug through like classical music and through jazz, playing the trumpet too. And I played the trumpet up until I was about 13, 14 years old. Mm-hmm. And then I was trying to remember today because I knew you were going to ask me about the beginnings of like me learning how to play guitar. And I was trying to remember why there was one summer between 13 and 14 that I was bound, set, and determined to learn how to play the guitar. And I remember really, really wanting to learn. And I don't remember if it was just because my friends wanted to play the guitar, or if it was because like bands were actually cool at that point in time. Like it was cool to have friends and say you were in a band, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But not actually ever write any songs or ever play any gigs or anything like that. You would just tell girls that you were in a band, and they would be like, oh my gosh. And then like if you were at a party, someone would like hand you a guitar and you'd strum Wonderwall or something like that. But I remember one summer I really wanted to learn how to play the guitar, so I went to my dad. And I said, hey, would you teach me how to play guitar? Because I knew he was a good guitar player. He picked up a guitar. We had a guitar. They were around our house the entire time I was growing up. And he would pick it up every so often. And I knew he was a really good guitar player because he had played for us a lot. And so I was like, well, would you teach me? And I think he was kind of wary because my interest in sports was starting to wind down, and my interest in just like raising hell as a kid was starting to wind up. And so I think he was a little wary of me like not wasting his time, but just like not being committed or interested mm-hmm. in actually taking the time to learn the instrument. And I remember he gave me this book, and I still have it, and it's called The Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Jazz Chords. And he said, well, sit down with this book over the summer or however long it takes you, learn all the major and minor open chords. And I was like, okay. And he was like, once you learn all those chords, let me know, and then you'll have the building blocks for me to be able to teach you. And I was like, okay, cool, sounds good. So actually the most committed I've ever been in my entire life. I spent that whole summer learning all the chords, and I still remember the guitar that I was learning it on because it was not a beginner-friendly guitar. We had this cheap nylon string guitar, acoustic guitar, and I remember no fret dots, so it was just like you had to just memorize where you were on the fretboard. So there was no like markings or fret dots, and the freaking fretboard was a boat, man. It was huge. I remember I couldn't, like, my fingers weren't strong enough. I couldn't stretch them to make all the chords. I remember like a C chord was too much of a stretch for me, and like the strings were old nylon strings, so they were sticky, and they were just like, it was just the worst guitar to learn or motivate someone to learn on, because it didn't even sound that great. It wasn't like a resonant, beautiful nylon string tone. It was like clank, clank, clank. And I remember, like, looking back on it, I'm like, it's funny that I was even committed, because it's like what I was playing wasn't going to be good no matter what I was playing it on. But I was playing it on probably the worst guitar to play it on, to like learn and motivate you to do more. But I did, man. I took the whole summer and I learned all the major and minor chords. And then I came up to my dad and I was like, hey, I learned all of them. Here they are. Like, I'm ready. Let's get these like lessons underway. And my dad was like, you know all the major and minor chords now. There's nothing else I can teach you. You know all you need to know. And I was like, oh, another hard life lesson from my father. But after that, dude, the interest just like took off. And I remember it was joint, like learning the chords, and then just like being like bit by the bug and the passion to like keep learning how to play guitar. And then, like, you know, learning how to play guitar turned into, well, now I want to kind of like see if I can make these chords combine together and make a song out of them. And now I want to write lyrics, and now I want to write songs that sound like this. And now I want to like write several songs together. Now I want to record songs. Now I want to play with other people. And it just like, I don't know, it kind of like snowballed from there. And now I'm just some dude who plays songs on the internet again.
Well, how did this journey take you to Omaha, Nebraska?
So the journey to Omaha, Nebraska is actually my wife's fault. And I'll blame her every single day for that. No, I'm kidding. She's been on track she wants to become a doctor. And so she got accepted into medical school at Creighton University, which is in Omaha. So, I mean, I wasn't going to let her go to Omaha alone. So, we moved out here 2 years ago. We're going on our third year starting, I think, tomorrow. It's starting year 3. It's officially 2 years starting tomorrow, or maybe 2 days from now. I think it was July 26th we blew into town. July 26th, 2016. So we've been in Omaha for 2 years, and I was talking to her about it yesterday. It feels like it's been forever, but it feels like it's also been no time at all. Like, I look back and I still remember the first summer that we moved here, and like the crazy storms that we were having, and like having never experienced like that kind of stuff, and experiencing like it gets cold out here. I don't know if you guys, like, it gets cold and doesn't get like that. I mean, Washington is mostly just like mid 40s, upper 30s. In the winter, rainy, gray, high clouds. So it's just like a gray day. That's basically the 8 months out of the year. And then you get 8-9 months out of the year. And then you get a little bit of summer that never reaches past like 90. Maybe it hits 100 every like once in a blue moon. But it gets like, I remember when we moved here, it was hot. I thought I was going to pass out from just like the heat and the humidity. And I just remember so vividly like that first summer and that first winter and all that kind of stuff. Just like experiencing a totally different place. It felt super foreign at that point in time. And at the same time, now looking back like 2 years, it feels like, man, I feel like nothing can surprise me anymore. And that's like a weird place to be in a place that you haven't been very long, you know?
Yeah. Well, I imagine there's like during the spring and summer, there's pretty severe thunderstorms too that roll through there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the thing. I remember me and my wife both play soccer, and we play on an indoor soccer team out here, or we were playing on an indoor soccer team. I remember we had like this really crazy storm when we were driving home. And I remember texting all of our teammates, "You better gather 2 of every animal. We need to build an ark right now." Like, the storm was so wild because, I mean, it rains in Washington and it rains hard, but it doesn't rain like that. I mean, it came down, and like the lightning and the thunder, you don't get that in Washington very often either. And I just remember thinking, Jesus, like, we better batten down the hatches. We got to get out of here.
Yeah, that's something that from guys that are from the West Coast I've talked to, it's like a surprise when they get, into a place where there's thunderstorms. Because they're not used to that, and that was eye-opening to me. In the South, we can have a thunderstorm every day of the summer.
Yeah. I just got to experience the South for the first time over this winter. We were just on tour. We went from summer NAMM down through Alabama into Florida, and then we played a couple Florida dates. And then when we were coming back, we cut through Mississippi and Arkansas, and so I felt like I got my South learning in for a little bit.
Yeah, well, you came right to my stomping grounds.
Oh yeah, I mean, we were in Mississippi for probably a minute and a half. We weren't there for a long time, but
yeah. Well, I talked to somebody who used to follow fish, and they were telling me that that they would spend the majority of their time crisscrossing through the South. When they were there, and it's like everybody goes through Mississippi. When you're in the South, it's just one of those places that if you're going to go to another place, you got to go through Mississippi.
Yep. That's what it ended up being. Florida, it was West Palm, Florida to Omaha. So it was like, I mean, in total, it was like a 25-hour drive to get back home.
Yeah.
And we stopped in Panama City and passed out for 5 hours. And then we got back up and started driving, drove probably about 20, maybe 21 hours back to Omaha. And it was just, man, we were all just like dead when we came back.
Yeah. Well, when I saw you guys at, and I'm talking you guys, I met, you had a drummer with you, and then Albert was playing bass for you. And you guys were at Summer NAMM back just a few weeks ago. And you guys were going to head out from there to go out and do this tour. I can't imagine. I was like drop dead tired from NAMM, and then to go do a tour after that.
It was strange. It felt so. I felt like we got this like second energy after. So like NAMM sucked all of the energy out of us for like music industry and networking, and then when it came time to like play some shows, I think we just got like a second wind. It was strange because it was like, okay, we closed one chapter of the trip doing the NAMM thing and like networking and like talking to people and meeting up with friends and just having like a good time, and then we went down to and played some of our shows. And it just felt like we got a second wind, like the ability to play live music really just like breathed some energy into us. And that was, I mean, we were new and fresh, and we were on edge to play some shows at that point in time. Like we were really trying to get going. Because originally we were supposed to play a show like at NAMM, and then that ended up falling through. And then we were supposed to play a show in Nashville not during NAMM, but like during the NAMM like weekend. And then that ended up falling through. And so it was just, man, we were prepared to play a show in Nashville, and then no show came up. And so we had all this like pent up energy to go play some live music, and it wasn't there. And then when we finally got to Panama City, we just like let Panama City have it. And I mean, they got it. We were ready to hit the stage then.
That's awesome. How many nights did y'all play?
So we were down in Florida for 7 days, I want to say. So, and we played a bunch of different cities. We played Panama City, like I said. We played St. Pete. We played Jupiter, and then Stewart, and West Palm. So, yeah.
Well, going back to, I want to talk about your tour.
Oh, sure.
But before I shift gears. I want to circle back to
Sure.
Nashville and just ask you about something.
Sure.
I was at that East Side Music thing. They had a party, I think the first night after NAMM.
Yeah.
And we were hanging out there, and there was this, that shop is so tiny, and it gets so many people pouring into that shop. It's so hard, but somehow it ended up like we ended up both in this acoustic corner.
Right.
And I wanted to ask you what you thought about, like, man, there's some amazing instruments.
There were.
Room.
I mean, it's really hard to like truly test an instrument out in that environment, just because it's like, I mean, you feel the pressure of like everyone staring at you. So you're like, okay, what's the best guitar lick I know how to play, and how fast do I think I can play it in front of these people? Not that that's what it's about, but at the same time, you're in front of like a bunch of like amazing guitar players. I mean, yourself included, but you're in front of a bunch of really good guitar players, and you just kind of want to flex on them and let them know that you're good and that you belong there and that you can hang. But on top of that, it's like there's a ton of people in there and they're all talking at the same time. And so you can barely hear, like, you have to go based off of like, man, this wood vibrates quite well. Or, just like you're not hearing the full resonance of any guitar or anything like that. So, and it's not like, I mean, it would feel awkward for me to plug something in and like actually really like rip into something, but there's some really cool instruments in Eastside, just hanging out too. And so that was the first time I'd ever been to my first summer NAMM. I didn't get to visit Eastside, even though we were I think that house was probably 8 blocks away from Eastside Music, and we didn't get to go. But this year I did get to go, and it was so like getting to experience that and getting to like see the music shop. And actually, one of my friends, Aaron Wall of AWOL Pedals, worked there as like a guitar tech for a little while, or like a guitar repair guy, a luthier, I suppose. So he worked there for a little while, and he kind of like showed me like the inner workings, I suppose, of the guitar shop and like his old station where he used to work out of, and all that kind of stuff. And so it was just really cool to get to see something that's like so storied and so talked about in the industry. Like every time you go to a NAMM or a summer NAMM, everybody talks about like the Eastside Music Supply Party and like the jam session that happens there, and like all the cool guitars that they have on the walls, and like the cool amps and like vintage gear that they have hanging out there. And for me, I'm still kind of pretty green to the gear community. I mean, for a really long time, I just played like garbage gear, and I didn't care because I was just having so much fun playing music. I didn't care what I was playing. It was just that I was playing, and like the energy of playing music with people. So only recently did I start actually caring about the gear that I play through, and like the sounds that I'm making, and like the type of soundscape that I'm creating. And it's the biggest money pit regret of my life. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm still pretty green, so it's really beneficial for me to have like cool, knowledgeable people there to kind of like Albert and like you and like Diaz and like the Carters and everybody who's just Mark Schwartz and all that kind of stuff. Everybody who's just like super kind and just willing to talk about stuff with you, and I don't have to feel embarrassed to say, oh no, I don't know anything. If somebody asks me, oh, do you know anything about these guitars right here, I don't have to be embarrassed and say no, because I don't honestly know, and I know that like I'm gonna get a lesson, but I'm gonna be better for it in the future. So It's just really cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, NAMM is just so it's like a it's so much going at one time, and you can't take it all in. Yeah. You got to learn to, just try to capture what you can and absorb it. And then it's crazy. Like you go home and you start thinking about it, and then it's like you start getting ideas. Oh, okay, this and that other. And so it's just kind of like a big flash, and then okay, how do I tear this apart and and you know, what does this mean to me, and how can I, you know.
Right. No. And I mean, if Summer NAMM is a flash, then Winter NAMM is like what's
Oh my
half of
goodness.
a flash, you know? Because I only got to spend 2.5 days at Winter NAMM, and it was like, that's not enough time. Like, that's just not, you can't experience everything. And like, so much stuff is happening, and it's just a big, I don't know how to do, carnival, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's just a carnival of chaos, I suppose. And it's just like, it's loud and it's crazy and it's like filled with stars, like guitar playing gods, I suppose, and like music makers and like movers and influencers in the industry, and everywhere you're seeing somebody that you recognize from like the internet or from YouTube or from like a gear group or somebody who's endorsed by somebody else or somebody who's in a band or whatever. And just like, I mean, that's how Nashville feels. It's like amplified times 100 when you're in Winter NAMM too.
Yeah, Winter NAMM really. I came home with my head spinning. Just.
I'm sure, dude. I came home with my head spinning because of lack of sleep. I don't think I went to bed before 4 a.m. like any of the nights for Winter NAMM, just because I was an idiot, and also just so much going on. So it was crazy.
Yeah, I think the highlight and one of the only things I really remember well from Winter NAMM was the taco party. I mean, that was like at the top for me.
That was a good time. That was honestly one of the better times that I had at any like music industry party that I've ever gone to. It was just a cool scenery. It was just being around people that I really enjoy being around, that I felt comfortable around because I knew them already. Like my first NAMM was like getting to know everybody and getting to talk to everyone for the first time, and then it was like going back and seeing old friends again, and then just amazing food, and then Gabriel being just like a really great host, and just, you know, putting on one of the better parties that I've ever seen. So that was just a great time.
Yeah, he really he's got a unique way of putting the LA music scene as a spotlight, you know. And I thought it was kind of crazy when everybody was telling me, like, I mean, the drive from Anaheim to LA is pretty big. Yeah. And I thought that was insane. Like, we're all going out to LA, you know? Yeah. But it was well worth it, and an experience that I don't think could be replicated very, very well anywhere else. Oh, no. Yeah. And that was actually my first time ever meeting Gabriel. So it was like, that was a really cool relationship to just like start at that point in time. Like I wasn't familiar with who he was, what he made, what he did. And he was just super welcoming, super nice, just like open arms, very like inclusive in his music community, and like putting LA on the map in like a way that's not like LA is not usually on the map, you know. When people talk about like I have friends who like move to LA to become musicians or to make it big or whatever, and like that version of LA is just so different than what he like brings to light, and just like the genuine goodness that you get out of like who he cares about, what he cares about, what he's bringing to you, like the people he cares about. Just like that version is totally different than this like television, like dirty, just gross version of LA that I think everybody kind of wants to sink into the ocean and like. I totally get what you're saying there, and I mean he's a good advocate for that scene that's there. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get back to your music. Sure. So you just did this tour. You've got this EP out. Yeah, Waking Up. Now, how long has your EP been out? So I released it in August. I think it was August 18th I released the EP. And honestly, I had been sitting on that EP for about a year. After I had written all the songs, and I had recorded them by myself, like at my in-laws' house in their weight room. Okay. Because I was living with my in-laws at the time before we moved out to Omaha, and I recorded all these songs, and I had my friends just on them,
on the songs. I had my buddy do keys. His name's Jordan Renshaw, and he does his own music too. So shout out to him. And then I had Ethan Luck from Reliant K and the Supertones, and basically every band from Tooth and Nail for a really long time.
Oh, wow.
I had him do the drums for it in his studio in East Nashville, I think is where he's at. But so I had him do the drums, and then I kind of like I did everything else, just the bass parts. I did all the guitar parts. I did all the singing for it. I did a lot of the keys for it, but not all of them. And then I did some like light mixing, and then I sent it to a friend for mixing. And then I sent it to Dana White, who does an amazing job mastering, and he's mastered a bunch of like pivotal records for me, like Jimmy Eat World records and all that kind of stuff. So I sent it to him. He was stoked on it and sent me just some like awesome versions back. And then I just sat on the songs, because I think part of me after moving out to Omaha was like, had a really hard time becoming a musician again, because at that point in time I was a full-time musician living out of Seattle, and then we moved down for the last like few months before we moved out to Omaha. We moved to save some money. We moved in with my in-laws, and so I kind of got a side job so that we could help pay for the move, and because being a musician doesn't pay amazing anyways, so we were just like, I thought it would just like save money and get a side job, and it was probably the worst job I've ever had in my entire life, and we don't have to talk about that, but it was when I moved out to Omaha, I think I just had a really hard time kind of breaking into the Omaha scene, or like understanding like musicians out here, or remembering what it was like to be like a new musician somewhere. Mm-hmm. And like having to meet people and having to learn the just like the venues that you have to contact and the people that you have to contact, and how do you promote yourself in a town you've never been to, in a state you've never been to, that like you don't even know if there is a music scene there. And I kind of sat on those songs for about a year, because the first few months I was just trying to maintain a West Coast fan base and just kind of cater to them exclusively and kind of ignore the place that I was living. And then I got scared about, well, is it too late now? Have I lost like the magic that's in these songs? Do I not care about them anymore? Are they songs that people don't want to hear? And then going through the process of like being scared of releasing new music, and then coming to the realization that like it's funny, like the whole messaging of the record is like the whole messaging of the record, and like the key line to me is like, I'm waking up, I'm not letting go. It was me having I had like this realization that like success looks different to a bunch of different people depending on what you view it as. Like if you're releasing music and you love that you're making music and you love that people are listening to it and you're affecting people with it, maybe they identify with like the same struggles that you're going through. And just like re-listening, I took a long time to just like listen to my own music, which I know sounds super like, I don't know, but like bragging on myself or something like that, just like inflated ego or something. But I took a long time just listening to my own songs, and really they resonated with me at the time. And I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to put these out there and let people know, yeah, I'm still making music. These are like some of the greatest songs that I feel like I've ever written. And I feel like it's the production that I really enjoy the production. I think it's really well done. I think that it speaks to a lot of different people. I think that it's just like, it was some good summertime jams, I felt like. And so I was just like, let's just release these songs, see how people react to them, see if they like garner any attention. Don't make a huge deal out of it, but like put songs out there to say, hey, I'm still making music. I'm still here. I'm still creating. I'm still an artist. What do you guys think? And so I released them in August of 2017, I think. August 18th, 2017. So it'll be about a year next month.
Awesome. Well, I want to ask you something, and I want to get into your songwriting and like
Sure.
your the style. But
Oh, sure.
before we get into that, you said something that really caught my attention about being a West Coast musician, and being in that scene, catering to that scene. You move to a new town,
Mm.
you don't know anybody. How do you think? What was it like to kind of reinvent yourself and then maybe extend your reach?
Oh, sure. I mean, first off, I got super, super lucky to meet some of the people that I met that were also interested in the music, not the music scene, but necessarily, but were also musicians and were interested in breaking into the Omaha music scene, and just to had the opportunity to work with musicians at Gear Supply who, well, one of them had grown up in the Omaha music scene, so knew a lot of people who were musicians, but could also like introduce me to other people in the scene. And it was all learning the map of the music scene here in Omaha was all so organic and so much of a whirlwind, I feel like, just because I mean, the town that I grew up in, that I played music in for years and years and years. It took me years and years and years
Yeah.
to meet all these musicians and like I guess network. I mean, that's kind of like a startup-y, like bro-y term, but like network with other musicians and meet other people and make friends in the industry and play shows and play shows and play shows and play shows and like two people come and then three people come and then five people come and then 10 people come and then 20 people come. And, it just like, it took me 10 years to probably get any kind of like traction in the town I grew up in. And so now to like move out here and try to make that all happen in 2 years, I think initially I had put like some unrealistic expectation on it. But at the same time, I think like I've grown to know the music scene and know musicians in Omaha, like 20 times faster than I did in my own hometown. So that was crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting you say that. It's a lot about cultivating like relationships,
Mm-hmm.
professional relationships, or just that community. That I think it's something that I think all musicians are looking for, is to be a part of a community and to
Right.
relate to one another. And that's interesting how you go from one scene to another, and it's kind of like, I got to crack this code. But once you do, it's like, oh, I can ease into it.
Oh yeah, definitely. And once so yeah, and you're exactly right. Like musicians, no matter where you are kind of exactly the same, right? They all want to be a part of something. They all want to make great art, and they all appreciate great art.
Hmm.
And I think that's the awesome thing about music, is it speaks to anyone, no matter where you are. Like I can write songs as like a West Coast dude that people in the South identify with, or that
Hmm.
people on the East Coast identify with, or that people in the Midwest can identify with. And like I can move out here and I can play those same songs for people out here, and they'll still understand what I meant, even though I'm writing about experiences that might have happened somewhere completely different where they've never been.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to this point. You describe your music as a nostalgic tinged rock and roll. Could you talk
Yeah.
about that for a minute?
Oh, sure. That's clever marketing for my own. No, I'm kidding. I mean, no, I'm kidding, but I'm also like, there's a little bit of truth in that too. But it took me a really long time, and even now, I mean, it's hard to define your own sound. And that's as a musician, that's like one of the first things that everybody asks you. Oh, you're a musician. What do you play? Oh, I play
Hmm.
guitar and sing. Oh, what kind of music do you play? What do you sound like? And then you have to sit there and you have to like stammer over like who your main influences are. And it's all bands that they've never heard of, because they're people who like only listen to the radio. And so you're like, have you heard of Tom Petty? Yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. You play songs like that. And so I was really searching for some kind of like common terminology that was uniquely my own, because for a while I was just saying rock and roll to people, and then people had their own like perception of what rock and roll is, or what you play when you play rock and roll, and excuse me. And then for a while it was like, oh, I play folk rock, and then people were thinking, oh, I played Mumford and Sons covers or whatever, and so I wanted to make sure that like I had something that was uniquely my own, but that was something that was kind of familiar to other people. So you can have your own like general sense, this like wide brush of what you're painting yourself with, but you have this like unique identifier with it. And so the nostalgia tinge worked for me on several levels because one, I feel like a lot of my music and a lot of my sound is influenced by, 90s alt rock and also classic singer-songwriters like, John Cougar Mellencamp, Tom Petty, Bruce Springsteen, all these like very classic singer-songwriters that transcend decades and transcend generations. I draw a lot of influence from them, but I also draw a lot of influence from like the music that I really was addicted to when I was growing up, which was 90s alt rock, like the Third Eye Blinds and the Better Than Ezras, the Gin Blossoms, and all that kind of stuff. Like I feel like I draw a lot of influence from there too, and I always want to write something with a little bit of, and it's natural and it's instinct at this point, but I've always wanted to write something with a little bit of homage, I suppose, to my influences. And you always end up writing what you listen to, or writing like what you listen to, but you're always the worst impression of it. You like write a song and you're like, oh, I really want to write a song that sounds like a Third Eye Blind song or whatever, and then you listen to a song and you're like, man, that sounds nothing like a Third Eye Blind song. But then someone else might listen to it and say, oh, actually that has like some of those reminiscent like pieces of what I would think like Third Eye Blind sounded like, or Matchbox 20 sounded like, or Rob Thomas, I guess, or so so that was the one level. And then a lot of my just like lyrical material and a lot of what I write about is things that I've experienced myself. And I'm not always writing about things that happen to me currently, or things that are happening or going to happen in the future, although sometimes I do write about that. But a lot of it's just like reflecting on like, these were really formative, these were really impactful things that happened in my life, and these affected me on a deep level, whether if it was like a deep emotional level, or if it was something that I didn't realize until I was like much older, like, man, I can't believe I lived through something like that, or I can't believe that I experienced something like that. Like, there's a little bit of nostalgia, there's a little bit of that like bittersweet twinge inside of you when you think back on like a really good memory, and you kind of think, man, you're sad that it's over, but you're happy that it happened, and you're glad that you have that thing to hold on to. I really like some of my favorite songs that I've ever written kind of like ignite that spark, for me at least, of that feeling that you had in the moment, and just like grabbing that feeling that you had in the moment that you had it, and trying to just like describe it.
Well, how does that translate it into performing live to you?
Sure. Performing live is like a beast, because it depends on where you are and what the crowd is like. But when you're taking something that's like so innately, and it's super funny, I was talking to Albert about this the other day too, but if you're taking something I'm such an energy vampire to like other people, so like if the crowd has a ton of energy, I'm gonna like suck that out of them and just like give them like a super energetic performance, and it's gonna be like fun, and it'll be loud, and it'll be like, but if the crowd has like no energy, and you can tell like doesn't want to be there, or it's like a weeknight, or it's like it's getting late and you're just up there with an acoustic guitar on your own, and it's just like, it kills me on the inside. Just like I get drained because I'm trying to like give them something at this point in time, and like experience something in the moment, and it's just like, you get to the point in the middle of your set where you're like, I don't want to be here anymore. I have 3 more songs. I don't want to play these songs anymore. They don't mean anything to me at this point in time, but I'm trying to get better at that, at providing the energy and providing the moment, no matter what the crowd is like, because you never know who's going to be in the crowd and who like needs that moment from you, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that I couldn't agree more. And that takes, I always think back, and this is a really odd example, but one time I went to go see Leonard Skinner play.
sure.
And it was this festival, and it was odd that they had LL Cool J opening up for them. Okay.
Already odd.
Yeah, that was such an odd thing. But LL Cool J came out, and I wasn't familiar with his music, but I was really impressed with his ability to entertain, because he would work the crowd, and all of a sudden, like, if he wasn't feeling like the crowd was responding the way that he thought they would, he would tell his DJ to kick on another beat and go to something else. I mean, and it was like he was shuffling. And I was like, I don't really see a lot of rock bands being that on the fly. But I was like,
it's tough. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was like, that is impressive, and this dude knew how to just work the crowd to bring them this experience that he thought they should have.
Oh, for sure. I mean, music for me, like, initially was just like escapism. Like, going to go see shows was like an escape from reality. It was like getting to go see these celebrities that you had only like watched online or like heard their record, and like you get to see them in real life, and you've seen pictures after pictures after pictures of these people. Like, I mean, I grew up when the internet was like booming, right? So you get to see pictures of these bands and like posters of these bands, and they post online and they post videos, and you never really get to experience that like real life thing. And then you go and you see these gods to you in real life, and just like you experience the like electricity in the air, and just like feeling that feeling of like going to a show and seeing something that you've like listened to over and over and over, and you get to hear them play their songs. And it's like, there's a very unique experience in going to see live music. And so what I want to do is provide that same experience to people, kind of in a similar way that I experienced it when I was young. And so that comes with the territory of like, the crowd's not always going to have 1,000% energy when you hit the stage. Like, sometimes they're going to have stood there for hours on end, like waiting for your band to come up, and like listening to other bands that maybe they don't like as much, or maybe they haven't heard anything from, so they're not invested in it. And you got to come and you got to bring that experience to them, because the last thing that you want to do is like have somebody going to their first concert and they've been listening to your album over and over and over, and they've been like idolizing what you do, or watching you online, or watching videos of you, and then they come see you give some like lackluster performance because you weren't feeling it that night. That's like the ultimate disappointment. And like, I never, ever, ever want to provide that I don't want to like deter anyone from the music scene because that happened. And I would feel so just guilty if that happened at like my own hands. So that's why I work really hard to try to bring the energy every single time. I don't know if I could switch songs like in the middle of it, but I don't know. Maybe, I mean, if I was opening for Skynyrd, I'd be I feel like there's more crossover between me and Leonard Skinner than there is LL Cool J and Leonard Skinner.
Yeah. Well, he was working a tough crowd, and I mean, he entertained them. He found a way to do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hats off to him for doing that.
Yeah. And to go back to that discussion, but like, he knew how to build a bridge with any audience.
Yeah.
And draw people in. And it's like, that impressed me ever since then. I was like, anybody could learn, how to connect with a crowd like that in any kind of genre they're in. They'd be very successful.
Right. No, definitely. Dude. Yeah. I mean, I guess that makes me respect LL Cool J more as an artist. I feel like his like artistry or his like musicianship he was at the tail end of his like music career when I was like when I started listening to hip hop. So so he wasn't really just like and then to have to cross over like that type of a crowd. I don't anticipate that he had a ton of like fans in that crowd, but he probably made a ton of fans in that
Yeah.
that.
And that's, that's a whole nother subject matter, but that's kind of the magic of festivals. You just
For
get so
sure.
much different stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Well, going back to the narrative here,
Sure.
so you've got this EP out, you've done this tour. Where you? What's kind of your goals, and where do you want to go next?
So right now I'm finishing up demoing a full-length record. I mean, I say it's a full-length because I've written almost 20 songs for it.
Wow.
And so I assume at least 10 of those will be usable. But you never know. And these were songs that were all written since I released Waking Up over the last year. These are all songs that I've written in that time. And so some of them I can already tell are going to get axed, but I always want to give an idea its full potential. Like I want to give it its full journey to make sure that there's not a nugget of quality inside of something. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to just toss. I'm not somebody who wants to just toss an idea out the window just because it's not working immediately. Sometimes I want to sit down and just like battle with a song until it like submits to my will or whatever, like there are some songs that I've wanted to happen so bad just because like I love the guitar part that I wrote in it, or I love a line that I wrote in the song. And sometimes like those songs you can't like struggle with and wrestle with and make happen, but sometimes you just have to chalk it up to like, okay, I took this thing as far down the road as I possibly could. This is what the finalized version would sound like. It's not there. It's not like connecting with me, which is such a weird like concept that you would create something out of what is essentially nothing and then not connect with it at the end. You know what I mean? Like you carry it all the way down the road. You've like battled with this song. You've battled with this thing that you created, and you've like made it this big production, and you get to the end of the line with the demo and you're like, this is not great. So sometimes you just have to like leave things by the wayside, or just recycle parts of them that you end up liking. Because I've had guitar lead lines that I've recycled from songs that I'm never going to release, or that just didn't end up working out or didn't resonate with me in the way that I wanted them to. Or sometimes songs just don't fall in the same like theme that you're trying to create with the record either. So that's an unfortunate thing for them to fall by the wayside. But then you can always kind of like keep them on board as like extra releases or like bonus tracks or whatever. But so I have about 20 songs written. To get back, I'm an expert at like totally like going off subject and just like getting lost, and the conversation will just end up somewhere else. I promise you. But to go back, so yeah, we released Waking Up, and I say we because I'm having a kind of a big identity shift right now. But so I released Waking Up in August last year. Over this last year, I wrote about 20 songs that I'm finishing up the demoing process for. I swear I'll probably have them all done by the end of this week, I'm hoping. And then I'm gonna sit down with some people that I really trust, and kind of just go through the songs and see like what's working with them, what's not working, what should probably just hit the cutting room floor, and what could be like improved upon. And then after that, it's going to be out to drum tracking. I have a buddy actually who works at Sinusoid. His name's John Schold. And he said that he wanted to do the drums for me on this record. He's an awesome drummer. And then gonna try to collaborate with as many musicians as I can on this next record, as many guitar players. I've had a few already that said that they were interested in being on the record. And then like some keys players I know. Maybe if I could get like a pedal steel player, that would be dope.
Oh, that'd be amazing, yeah.
But yeah, just being able to, because my last record was very much self-centric. It was very like, I created this music, I wrote these songs, I recorded all these guitar parts, I recorded like all these bass parts, I recorded all these key parts. It was very kind of self-centric, and I only really let two people into the creative process on that. So with this next record, I kind of wanted to make it more about the community, because I know a ton of amazing musicians and I want them to all be a part of this project, because that's kind of the big shift that my music has been taking. So as a solo artist, like, my music is under my name, Isaiah Dominquez. And what I've realized over like years of being a solo artist is that it gets really, really, really lonely being just you, and just being like sitting on a stage without a band, and like touring without a band, just alone with an acoustic guitar. And I was like, this is not why I like to play music. I like to play music because I love musicians, I love connecting with people, and I love creating that environment where people can experience like the magic of live music, right? And I'm missing other musicians in it. And so what I wanted to do was create a band, and then create kind of an identity behind everybody who's like on the movement of this music. So the band and the identity of the movement of this music was kind of going to be one amalgamation of just like what I feel and what I want to bring to people and how I want them to feel. And so that's where the shift from just Isaiah Dominquez to Isaiah Dominquez plus Las Olas came from. So the Las Olas, for those of you who don't know, means the waves in Spanish. And I was thinking like, man, I'm from the West Coast. There's, the ocean is there, but also like, this is music. There's sound waves, and the word is the same. And it's just like the sound waves, the ocean, and then the wave of like this movement that's happening, and this like shift in mentality of like, music is a community. I want to involve other musicians in what I'm doing and what I'm making. I think that these songs are going to be amazing. I have like really good plans for the production that's going to happen with them. The songs that I have already, I'm like super addicted to. And I just think that there's a big movement behind this next record that I'm really going to be psyched for. So. And then after that, it's going to be like, okay, get the record all tracked, get all these musicians involved, and then like start pushing the singles, and then and then release the record, and then tour more and play more shows, and just see where this thing goes, see where this movement goes.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that you described that as kind of an identity shift.
Yeah. Because it truly, I feel like it truly is an identity shift, because there's a lot of like, and I thought about this for a really long time, but there's a lot of solo artists out there who are in it for themselves, and like they want the notoriety, and like, while my name is always like the header, it's always the thing that leads it, and I'm the chief songwriter, and I'm the one who like does a lot of the thinking and the ideation and all the stuff behind the scenes of like being in a band. At the same time, it's like, none of this is possible if I don't have like people who want to play music with me, or if I don't have people who want to show up to my shows, or if I don't have people who like want to even listen to like whatever it is that I'm writing. So it really is just like, it was my way of being like, okay, here's songs that I'm writing, but you're a part of it, kind of thing. And it really is like, it's me trying to be as selfishly selfless as possible, if that makes sense.
No, I really like that approach, and I can't think of a better way to help extend reach musically than to bring in the community. Oh
yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited, like, that's something I'm also excited about, because like, I do know so many like amazing musicians, and I would love to like get them all involved, and I want to hear everyone's like fingerprints and like footprints, I suppose, on the songs that are being written, because I've always been kind of a band leader that doesn't want to step on anyone's toes, and I don't really care if they play things exactly like the recording. I'm not looking for like a pristine like performance. I kind of like having a little bit of that like grit inside of what I do, especially when you go see someone live. Like, it's one thing to to hear someone play a perfect version of the song that you've heard on their album, but it's another thing to like hear the humanness in like their performance and kind of like see someone live and hear the song, but like, oh, they changed the guitar part a little bit, or they changed the solo, and I actually like this live solo more than I like the recorded like guitar solo, or they changed the last chorus, or they went into like a jam session after the song was over or in the middle of the song, or they changed the feeling of that last verse that it's like something unique, and it creates like less of this like clean, like polished version of what you're hearing, and more of this like real performance of just like people who are genuinely good at playing their instruments. And I've had the pleasure of having a band that is like amazingly talented musicians, and every once in a while I'll just sit there and just like laugh because like in the middle of a song, because I can't believe that like some of the like guitar parts that are being played, or like the bass part that's being played, or the drum, like a drummer will do something and I'll just like, I can't help but just chuckle, because there's this like unique chemistry that happens when a band is just locked in and everybody has like just great skill to work with. So I'm really excited to get these people in and like have them listen to these songs and like hear their fingerprints on this album, and kind of like create this new sound out of like this sound that has been uniquely my own for a really long time.
Yeah, that's an awesome way. I like the way you're going about that, and I can't wait to see what shapes up from that, and definitely going to be following that, and I think our fans of the show will really enjoy listening to your music. Now you can pull it up on iTunes. It's pretty easy to find your EP. You have a couple of them, I think, actually.
I do, yeah. There's Evergreen State, and then there's Waking Up.
Yeah.
And then I have a couple like one-off singles that I put in there too, and some Christmas songs too. That's from a different lifetime ago. That was back when I was signed to a label out in Seattle and recorded some Christmas songs.
Oh wow.
I really would like to do like an updated version of those songs, because it's just like it's like the ghost that haunts me every like November or whatever, because I'll get my like TuneCore report and it'll be like, oh, by the way, these songs are coming back up for renewal, and I'm like, oh, I don't want these songs anymore. Who's paying for these? Just, oh man. So I should maybe this Christmas I'll just do some like live versions or something else that's different. But yeah, I have some Christmas songs up there if that strikes your fancy in the middle of July, or I guess the end of July.
Well, I know that myself and some of the other podcasts like to do Christmas episodes, so maybe we could.
You can grab them if you want.
Yeah.
Just let me know. I'll shoot you an email with all of the WAV files for them.
Awesome. Well, so they can find your music there, and just follow you on Instagram and Facebook, and kind of keep up with your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. At Isaiah Dominquez, that's all of them. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. And then also, if you're just a follower of Isaiah and you happen to listen to this show, I invite you to come check out my website, thecliftonworleyshow.com. And I'm on Instagram, Clifton Worley Show. And just if you like this and this style of podcasting, just invite you to subscribe to it and check us out and follow our show as well. And thank you so much, Isaiah. It's been a blast talking with you about just this whole musical journey you've been on.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. We will have to get you in and on an update on kind of where your journey is a few months down the road. So
let me know.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Jesse's in the front yard.